homes to find equally challenging circumstances that have left many starving and on the brink of death. For more, Fani Limru reports.
The violence in the still occupied Western Tigray could perhaps be the most horrific in terms of its scale and systematic nature, resulting in the displacement of more than 1 million Tigrayans, a deliberate and systematic attempt to rid Western Tigray of its majority Tigrayan population. We visited an IDP camp in Shira, in northwestern Tigray, where many of these IDPs have been forced to seek shelter. We spoke to a group of IDPs displaced from Tigray in western Tigray that tell us of the gruesome nature of the violence that had forced them to abandon their homes.
They killed my husband, Takhloini, and my granddaughter, Samra. I had an ill son. His name was Kiflom Takhloini. He died due to lack of vitamins. He suffered for 7 months. First, they stormed our barn and looted our cattle. Then they killed my husband. My husband's body lied on a field for 3 days because there was...
Bury him. I ran to a jungle called Tafarajaj to save my life.
The IDPs say the violence was not exclusive to Tigrayans, but was also inflicted on Amharas that opposed the violence on Tigrayans.
There were men named Gashau and Fa'ad. They were from Amhara. The Amhara forces killed them after accusing them of collaborating with Tigrayans, just because they refused to support the soldiers' deeds.
The IDPs say they were told to leave their homes by Amhara forces and told them that Tigrayans were no longer allowed to live in the area.
They said all Tigrayans must leave. This is our land, and Tigrayans would not be allowed to live here. Children, elderly, and pregnant women are being harassed and killed by these forces. The world should act immediately. Many are being killed.
They were killing Tigrayans. We lived side by side for decades with those who are now torturing us. They were killing innocent shepherds just because they were Tigrayans.
A joint report by Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International said that Ethiopian forces joined by their allies from Eritrea had committed war crimes and crimes against humanity through a systematic effort to ethnically cleanse Western Tigray of its majority Tigrayan population.
The siege has left many in desperate condition, including patients with chronic illness who have not only been denied basic services such as banking and telecom, but also medication. Our reporter spoke to Froweni Gavrasgafir, patient with a chronic illness, one many who have not been able to access food or medication. Miro Namana had the details.
Froweni Gavrasgafir is a resident of Ma'ala. She's one of the 6.5 million Tigrayans who have been immensely affected by the ongoing siege. She suffers from a chronic illness, and she says that the siege has made it impossible for her to support her family and get any medication.
Before the conflict, I used to do part-time jobs and worked at a health centers in the rural areas, but now there's no paying job that I could do, and we're facing severe starvation due to the siege. On top of that, I have chronic illness.
Froweni says the depletion of medical supplies worsened her illness, which in turn has deterred her from working and supporting herself and her family.
There's no medication whatsoever. Even whenever we go to the hospital, we get anxiety. We're constantly told that medications have been depleted. I've been told to go to either hospital after 7 days, which I did, but there was nothing. And when I was coming home afterwards, I blacked out on the streets. My neighbors picked me up and brought me here. I could not move from my bed for 7 days straight.
Froweni says the siege has led her to face immense correlated problems like starvation, and also said it made it hard for her to receive help from others as they were facing the same problems too.
I don't have anything to eat or drink. My neighbors are the ones helping me out until today. If they don't have anything to eat, I don't get anything either. There's nothing I can do. On top of that, I have a chronic illness. This makes it so much harder to survive. I even get the drinking water from my neighbors. Everyone is facing the same problems these days. Even my neighbors don't have much. They just share whatever they have with me. The other woman who helps me out, for instance, is an IDP from Zalambesa. She barely makes a living. I'm currently residing at other people's house.
Lastly, Froweni made a strong urge to the international community to take immediate action towards bringing a solution to the ongoing chaos and lifting the siege that has been casted for close to a year now.
As you know, we're under siege. As humans, we should get the treatment that we deserve from the international community. All humans are equal. Skin color doesn't define anyone. The international community should observe our circumstances and take actions. No one in history has ever undergone this much hardship, all the war and siege. They should help stop all the injustice that's happening to us and work towards lifting the siege in the shortest time possible.
The condition of the more than 2 million IDPs in Tigray is deteriorating on a daily basis as the Ethiopian government continues to block vital services, food aid, and medical supplies. Our reporters met with Mulureta, who witnessed 5 IDPs die, including her son, due to lack of food and other essentials. For more, Saron Sagay reports.
Mulurada and her husband, Takhalawini Gabragargas, used to lead a happy life in a warm house in Tsagade, Western Tigray. Her husband, Takhalawini, was a veteran. At the start of the conflict, the Amhara militia started attacking civilians in her village, Aurora. They found Mulu and her son with a hearing impairment at their home. She says that they started attacking her in front of her disabled son, saying this is not a Tigrayan land and that Tigrayans should leave or die.
They came into my house and started beating me. My 20 years old disabled son was made to watch while they were attacking me. He is unable to hear or speak, but that didn't stop them from beating me.
Mulu fled to the woods to run away from the indiscriminate killing. After days in hiding, Mulu finally came out of the caves to check on her husband and child. She went home to find out that her husband has been killed days ago.
My husband and his fellow veterans were killed in their own home. The Amhara militia men beaten my husband Takhalawini Gabragargis along with his friends Abadi, Sagad, Chigwayana, and Barhaadi to death, after accusing them of being junta. After killing them, the militia men forbid burial and abandoned their bodies for more than 3 days. My disabled son was also detained, without any food or water for days. We saw the mass grave of my husband and his fellow veterans after 7 days.
After the horrors they witnessed, Mulu and her son fled their hometown Tsagade. They sheltered in an IDP camp in Shira, but the suffering continued. 7 months into their stay in the IDP camp, her disabled son died due to starvation. IDPs and structures formerly built for schools.
The almost year-long blockade on essential including aid has had a devastating impact on persons suffering with chronic illnesses who have not been able to access food or medication. Tsege Gebrehut is a diabetic living in Magala. She says the blockade on vital services has left her and many more in dire humanitarian assistance that is in very short supply. For more, Kibrom Moldovhan has the details.
Tsege Gebrehut is a resident of Kuha, a sub-city of Magala. She had a good life, having built a big house in a hotel in Kuha by an income she accumulated working abroad. But these days, she's on starvation and also unable to buy her medication as her hotel is closed due to the siege that has been imposed on Tigray for almost a year now.
I used to work in the Middle East and came back to my homeland, and I bought this house. I had a good life before the war began, but now I'm in starvation. I don't have much to eat. I'm lonely. There's no one to help me. I couldn't get a medication, and I can't help myself. I don't go outside. I stay at home most of the time.
Tsege's neighbors say that she was a hard-working woman who was providing for her and her family, but now she's in desperate situation as her income has terminated following the conflict and also the siege on the region.
Everyone in the community knows the fact that Tigray used to have a good life. But now, like many of us, she is in a difficult situation due to the siege on Tigray. Basic necessities are not available. There isn't access to humanitarian aid. Tigray couldn't contact with her children and relatives because there isn't network access in the region. She is also economically unstable as she couldn't access to her savings following the closure of banks.
The people of Tigray are in desperate situation. I know Tsege very closely.